Yeah, I think some of that, happens almost like intuitively. Like, and I remember I went to Transformance, which is the Burning Man regional in North Carolina, and they burned a big wooden statue. That one year was a woman, and I was chemically altered at the time. But I had an experience of like this being like a real sacred ceremony that was like the Wicker Man tradition, and it's suddenly like, in my state I could see like nature spirits and beings and elemental beings like coming to congregate to participate in the energy of this transformation. So I think that you're absolutely right, and the more we become conscious of it, there's a lot of attempts to create kind of self-conscious rituals around this stuff, and they often seem to me to fall a little bit short or not somehow fully hit the mark. Whereas I don't think the people who put together Transformance had that conscious intent, and yet it happened in my perspective. So, but maybe that's part of this process. Whereas we're evolving our awareness about these other realms, we'll be able to make the right, even planetary grid working, type experiments. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but it's coming closer and closer. I'm curious to hear what Ben has.
Inspiring these people or motivating these people. But see, it goes even further than that. If we come over here to the New World, we find the Mayans engaged during that precise same 2-century interval in their final great wave of esoteric building activity. We go all over into China, Thailand, Cambodia, the last great wave of temple building was being undertaken there, precisely at the same time that the Europeans are building the Gothic cathedrals. It's clear to me that there's some commonality there that's affected all these disparate cultural groups towards a common end. And when you study the systems, you study the architecture, you study the sacred geometry, when you study the archaeoastronomy of these disparate temple complexes and so forth, what you find out is the same. The outer expression, if you look at Chichen Itza, which was built about the same time, what you see is its outer expression is quite distinct from a Gothic cathedral, and yet underlying it is the same template. And it's a template of geometry that's purpose is linking the heavens with the earth. And somewhere in there, you come across this concept that somewhere the planet has fallen out of balance. And the discord that we see in our own species, and in our own social life, and cultural life, and political life, is a manifestation of the planet itself having fallen out of balance. And when we go back to 4,300 to 4,500 years ago, we can find the great wave of building in the Giza Plateau. We can find the Babylonian ziggurats, the great Sumerian cities. We can find the cities in the Indus Valley being built, the first wave of great earthworks in North America. All of this, again, is going on in this 2-century period. When you study the specifics of the earthworks in North America, and you study the specifics of the Egyptian architecture and the Sumerian architecture, again, what you see is the same guiding principles, the same geometry, the same astronomy, and somehow this motivation, something that inspires and triggers and motivates these people to organize all their efforts towards this end of creating these masterpieces. I think that ultimately what we're dealing with is an effort to essentially reharmonize the earth and the heavens, and thereby bringing this harmony back into human society. And somewhere in this whole process, again, getting back to the cyclical nature of this that we can't seem to get away from, it seems that there are these nodal points that where we come upon these, and something begins to activate human consciousness. We've certainly seen this happen in the last couple of generations. When we look at this from the big perspective, if it takes 2 or 3 or 4 generations, that's not a long span of time within the larger measure of time. And I tend to be optimistic and think that what's going to happen is that the universe has been signaling us all along. Things have been happening, specific things happening that is like the larger cosmic framework trying to get our attention down here and say, look, there's a bigger world out there and you're actually part of it. And until you remember that you're a part of this cosmic world, things aren't going to get set back on the right track. And so part of it is this, again, like this, the collective amnesia that we suffer from. the birth of the modern world age was an extremely traumatic event. And I think that we are suffering from a kind of memory suppression. And part of, I think, our going forward is going back and coming to terms with this traumatic birth of the modern world age. And also coming to realize that we have been given this legacy of tools to work with and methods that, when coupled with our own modern science, has the possibility of humanizing our science, of spiritualizing our science. When we look at the specifics of the ancient architectural masterpieces, what we discover is that, you know, that there's a grid. I think you were talking about an etheric grid. I think there is an etheric grid, and it actually manifests itself in the geological structure of the planet. And these ancient scientists, architect, priests, builders were masters of this science. They knew that the heavens above and the earth below were reflections of each other, but due to the changing cycles, they would become out of phase. And part of the process of building a Gothic cathedral, or building a pyramid, or building a ziggurat, was to reestablish this connection, this link between earth and heaven, so in a tangible way, so that people on a day-to-day basis could experience it and see it. And so every facet of life in that context was spiritualized or was symbolized, so that just the most routine and mundane activities of daily life could be a reminder that we are a part of this greater existence. In other words, ritualizing daily life. So I think that there is a context of knowledge, and I think what we're doing here is that part of the going forward here is having meetings like this, having these dialogues. Education is a big part of it, because there's so much we need to learn to make this be a successful enterprise that we're about to undertake. And we're about to undertake an enterprise that is the 21st century version of the building of the Gothic cathedrals. And it's going to be beyond anything I think that anybody who's come before us has been able to imagine. And the responsibility for launching this work that will go far beyond our generation, the responsibility for launching this work has been placed squarely in our hands. And if there's a future generation living successfully on planet Earth, they're going to be looking back to the early 21st century and saying, thank you to that generation, because they did what needed to be done so that we here now can be living a successful life on this planet.
Thank you again to our panel members, Randall Carlson, Jonathan Phillips, Shasta Zaring, and Daniel Pinchbeck.